And once you begin to experience the benefits of meditation, then you are in the clear, because then your motivation is easy to come by, because you're now understanding more and you're experiencing more of the value and the benefits of meditation. Yeah, and so most of the people that come to the class have been coming consistently for years. And so I assert that that's evidence that there must be value here. Because, most people aren't willing to put their energy into much of anything for any length of time unless the payoff is there. And the payoff in meditation comes gradually, right? So you have to understand that, and you have to be willing to deal with the process of becoming consistent in the practice of meditation, and you have to deal with the process of becoming a student of meditation. So this isn't just stress reduction, and the teachings and the practice of meditation as it was originally conceived was not just for stress reduction. As a matter of fact, it wasn't for stress reduction at all. It was part of a process that involved learning about the nature of reality and learning about the nature of what it means to be alive and exist in the world as a human being. And those teachings are coupled up with the practice of meditation, because as you begin to understand what the teachings are telling you, you begin to use meditation as a way of practicing having a direct experience of the teaching. So in the beginning, it's conceptual. And when you listen to the concepts, you study the concepts, you understand the concepts, you may not agree with the concepts, and so you have to go through a process, right, of dealing with the concepts. And if you have a teacher, you have somebody to interact with about that and ask questions about that and so forth. But eventually, there comes a time when you have to move from concepts to the actual experience of the truth to see what the concepts are talking about for yourself. Right, and what the teachings tell us and what the practices are about is you're having an experience of what it's like to be you. Having an experience of what it's like to be you, not just thinking that you know who you are, thinking that you know the way it is, and depending upon what you learned in your conditioning to function in the world. Instead of that, to have a direct experience of you, because there is a you here, right? So if there is a you here, it must be possible to have a direct experience of that you that's here, other than the ideas you have about it, right? And so the teachings are about that. And as you begin to practice meditation, you start to get more advanced and you become familiar with what it's like to feel, to experience meditation, you start to become aware of the possibility that you could actually enjoy your life, that you could actually be relaxed, you could be at home in your body, you could have understandings about the way things work so that you're more effective in living your life. You stop making the same mistakes over and over again, which is the way it is for most people, right? The old definitions of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting the result to be different. That's the story of humanity, isn't it? I mean, we're still killing each other over ideas, so we haven't gotten that far out of the cave as far as humanity is concerned. And one of the benefits, if I were to tell you what is, because I've been teaching this for 50 years, and I'm a psychologist, so I know a little bit about human behavior, and I've been practicing it for that long. And when I look at, what are the benefits of this, maybe the biggest benefit I've gotten out of the practice of meditation is that I'm not perturbed. I'm unperturbed, right? That you can get to a place where no matter what happens around you, the ability that has to throw you off center, the ability that has to put you in upset, right? The ability that has to have you become confused and irrational, and the ability that has to have you become reactive and misbehave, right, and act out, right, that all of that starts to damp down, and you start to see your way, to navigate your way through the experience of your life in a way in which you can stay grounded, you can stay centered, and it's hard to move you. It's hard for you to be perturbed. And if you're a typical human being, that's a big deal, right? Because you waste a lot of energy being upset, right? And you may do a lot of damage being upset, right? When we're angry and upset, we don't see things clearly. People we love become the enemy. We can even hate ourselves so much that we kill ourselves, right? So that's the craziness, that's the neurotic mind, right? And so one of the things that has to happen in this process is for you to begin to learn what the truth is, to begin to learn what the truth is. You hear these things being said, the truth will set you free, you've heard that stuff. Or the other one is know thyself, right? And so the teachings that go along with meditation are exactly those teachings, right? The teachings of learning who you actually are, know thyself, right? And the teachings that tell you there is a truth, there is a reality that is actual, that does exist. It's not a mental state. It's actual. It actually does exist. And that reality that actually does exist, which is called the truth, is something that most of humanity is unaware of. That's a pretty crazy reality to consider, and yet it's true. Most of humanity does not know what the truth is. And one of the reasons they don't know what the truth is because they think they know what it is. So, if you look at the practice of meditation, we're saying stop trusting thinking as the only way to know anything. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. The you that you think you are, the character, the person, the named, right, the body, all that stuff, right, the drama, the story, the you that you think you are has taken on thinking as a way of existing, has it not? Yeah, the you that you think you are has taken on thinking as a way of being, a way of existing in the world, right? It's such a common reality that we actually live our lives with the point of view that if there's a problem, the way you solve it is to I'm talking about the way most people, right? Yeah, if there's a problem, the way most people, we're not talking about enlightened Frank, we're talking about unenlightened humanity, right? So the common way that most people deal with life and solve their problems is by thinking. And so it's a big discovery for them to realize that while that may be true, while thinking has a place, right? While thinking has a place in terms of dealing with things, right? What we have talked about here as a working mind, right? That's taking place only a small part of the time. The rest of the time, you're just busy being crazy, right? So we need to use thinking to deal with things. That's true, okay? But if you start to pay attention, you will begin to see that that's only necessary a relatively small part of the time. The rest of the time, when you're walking around not having to deal with anything specifically, you're in what the brain scientists call the default state, or another way they describe it is to say your mind is wandering, right? And when your mind is wandering, that's negative. That's bad, right? Because when your mind is wandering, fear is the fuel for the wandering, you see. Self-concern is the fuel for the wandering, right? Interest in avoiding discomfort and pain is the fuel for the wandering. So you're always thinking about your life, right? Your life becomes this thought process, right? And you're always thinking about your life, and you're thinking about what happened yesterday, you're thinking about what will happen tomorrow, and you're thinking about what's happening right now. And the whole process is a paranoid process. Right? The whole process is the reason you're thinking about it, right, is you want more of what you like and less of what you don't, right? So you're going to think about it. You're going to think about how am I going to get more? I'm going to think that way. And how am I going to avoid losing anything that I obtain? How am I going to avoid pain? How am I going to avoid emotional upset? How am I going to avoid a lot of the realities that come my way in life? And so that becomes the thought process. That's what the thinking is all about. right? And it's neurotic, because when you're in the process of the default state, when you're in mind wandering, when you're in the mind wandering process, it's about you. It's all about you. You know, what I want, what I don't want, what I need, and so forth. And so that's why they call it the ego, right? It's all about you. It's about what I can get, what I can keep, what I can save, what I can avoid, like that. And it becomes a pathological process. It becomes a pathological process. So what I mean by that is that most of humanity is mentally ill. That's what pathology is. It's a disease, right? Most of humanity is mentally ill. And the biggest problem about that is that the most of humanity that's mentally ill doesn't know that they're mentally ill. They think that they're normal, right? So they think that they're normal, and they can get away with thinking that they're normal because if everybody's crazy, we're all normal. Right? If everybody's crazy, we're all normal, right? All you have to do is look at the news to see that what we call normal is crazy. Because what goes on in the world, the way we move around in the world, the way human beings behave, right, is paranoid, fear-based, right, and dysfunctional. You don't have to believe me. All you have to do is look at the news. All you have to do is really be brutally honest and pay attention to your own mind. Be brutally honest and pay attention to your own behavior. Be brutally honest and pay attention to the quality of your relationships. Be brutally honest and pay attention to the quality of your life, whether you're happy or not. Be brutally honest and pay attention to what you're spending your energy on, right? Most people are spending their energy on making money, right? Aren't they? Yeah, why are they doing that? Right? Because the belief still is healthy. There's still this belief that's pervasive, right? That money solves problems, right? Even though the evidence cannot be refuted that that's a lie. Even though the evidence cannot be refuted that that's a lie. The evidence is very clear that that's a lie, right? But, you know, when you present that evidence to people and you give them the opportunity to check their own thought processes out and come to the realization that they must be missing something, because that doesn't work. Money doesn't make you happy. It may give you temporary periods of gratification, right? But that never lasts. So that's not happiness. That's just temporary, right? So there's a process that needs to be gone through in order to wake up and see things the way they are and take responsibility for being alive, and take responsibility for the possibility that it is realistic to expect to be happy in this life if you pay attention and you start to see the difference between the truth and the ignorance that people are living in, that they are confused about and think that that's the truth. And for those of you who have been coming to class, you know how deep this gets, right? In terms of the very fact that you don't know who you are, and then the very fact that you don't know what's real and what's not real. Obviously, how can that lead to a satisfying life? How can that lead to a quality life when that's the case? So here we have meditation, and we have a teaching that when you put these teachings and this meditation together, it can bring you through a process in which you'll discover the truth. It can bring you through a process in which you'll come to have a direct experience of your true nature and find out that all you have to do to be happy in this life is to be yourself. That's all you have to do. To be happy is to be yourself. But then the question is, what self? You know, what self? And I was thinking about this in terms of, there was a famous meditation teacher who was teaching Meditation 101, and the way he taught it, he said to the audience, how many of you are aware? And raise your hand if you know you're aware, and some people raise their hand. Raise your hand if you know you're not aware, raise your hand. And then raise your hand if you don't know. If you're aware or you're not aware, raise your hand. So people raise their hands. And then he said, now, for those of you who said you were aware of being aware. For those of you who said you were aware of being not aware. For those who said you don't know, you were aware that you didn't know. So all of you were aware. You see the difference? So people live on the side of this in which I'm aware, I'm not aware, I don't know. That's where they're living, right? And what meditation does is it's allow you to discover that there is a precursor to all of that, right? Called the awareness of that, right? The awareness of that. And what we're practicing in meditation is discovering that awareness is constant, that awareness is always there, that awareness is what you actually are. And if you live as that in life, you will be unperturbed, right? You'll be unperturbed because the awareness is not affected by what's happening. You can check this out right now. This is not something that takes any time. You can do a little experiment with yourself anytime you want, right? And start to pay attention to what's happening at any particular point in time, right? How you feel, what the circumstances you're in are, right? The thoughts you're having, all that stuff, right? How your body feels, right? What emotions are there, right? And at any time, no matter what the circumstances are, the thoughts are, and the emotions are, at any time, just like in the example that the teacher gave, at any time, the awareness of that is there. Yes? Yeah, the awareness of that is there. But you're not experiencing being the awareness of that. You're experiencing being the person that you think you are who doesn't like the circumstances. That's what you're experiencing, right? You're not experiencing being the awareness of what's happening. No, your attention is on being the person that you think you are in the circumstances you find yourself in, right? Struggling to make it work. Struggling to make it work. And so, what that amounts to, right? Because we're all conditioned to have expectations. We're all conditioned to want to live the good life. We're all conditioned to want to be happy. We're all conditioned to want to be comfortable, right? So when you begin to understand how meditation works, right, you begin to realize that if you were able to accept life as life is, if you were able to accept everything about life the way life is, like age, death, sickness, right? Old age, death, sickness, and dying, not having control over circumstances, not knowing what's going to happen next. If you could accept all that, because that's the way it is, if you could accept all that and then live consistent with that acceptance, how could there be a problem? How could there be a problem? One of the things that you come to see through this practice and these teachings is that there is no problems in life. No. It's the way we think about what's happening that creates the problem. Is it not true? It's how you think about what's happening that creates a problem. It puts you into conflict with people. It puts you into conflict with life. It puts you into conflict with your body. It puts you into conflict with yourself. And that's called suffering. Right? So what we're doing with meditation is we're coming out of that unrealistic expectation. We're coming out of this misunderstanding about who we are. We're starting to experience life as awareness. And when you start to experience life as awareness, the problems disappear because awareness is unaffected by life. Just like the space in this room is unaffected by anything that's happening in this room. It's exactly the same type of thing. Right? So it takes a little while to catch on to this because you've been groomed and conditioned to be a thinking machine, You've been groomed and conditioned to be a thinking machine. So that's still going to keep running, right? But if you practice meditation and you come to learn about these teachings and you start to put it all together, the dots start to connect. You're not blind anymore. You can see. You become a seer, right? And then you can start to work with what you have in a direction that actually will have the outcome be that you're happy. It's a real possibility, and that's why people deal with what they have to deal with to learn to meditate and practice meditation. That's why people seek out teachers and study the teachings that coincide with meditation, because when you put the whole package together, it adds up to you getting exactly what you've always wanted, right? What you've always wanted. What do you want? You want to be happy, you want to be relaxed, you want to be able to enjoy your life, you don't want to live in fear, you don't want to be paranoid, you don't want to be in conflict, right? And so all of that is actually available. That's the promise of the teachings and the practice. But there's no free lunch. So you have to go through being a crazy, neurotic person that's stuck in thinking all the time. You have to go through the process of coming out of that gradually and becoming an aware, awake human being that understands that you can know something without thinking about it. That's a great discovery. You can know something without thinking about it. In fact, you can know it, you can have a truer experience of it without thinking about it. Because thinking is always distorted, it's an interpretation. But a direct experience of something is not an interpretation. You can right now, you can look around in this room, right? And you don't have to think about every little thing in this room in order to be here and be relaxed and know that you know where you are. You don't have to do that. Your awareness is doing that naturally. Immediately it's doing that. We don't even notice that. We don't even notice that. So now you want to take advantage of the power of awareness and start to develop your ability to identify yourself as that awareness and see what it would be like to live your life that way. Yeah, and that's called enlightenment. So that's immediately available to anybody that's willing to take the trip and deal with what it takes, right, to pay attention to the teachings, learn the teachings, develop the understandings, and practice meditation. Easy, right? It's not easy, right? But it's not easy, but it's nowhere near as hard as it is when you don't do it. Nowhere near as hard as it is when you don't do it. So we're talking about a way out. We're talking about a way out of this rat race, right? Where you can actually start to wake up in the morning and be happy and not have to have a reason. And be happy without worrying about getting enough money to buy what you need to be happy. So this is called the natural state, the natural state. See, the thing is that human beings didn't know when you were a child you were practicing being crazy. You didn't know. When you were a child, you were practicing being crazy. You were practicing behaving the way the adults behaved, and they were crazy, right? So you didn't know you were practicing being crazy, but you were practicing, right? And now you have to practice being sane.